Good day to everybody. So today we will start enterprise architecture course module with the introduction lecture. So I hope everybody is doing good at the moment in your homes. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Asanka Dilruk, graduated from University of Moratuwa as a BSc engineer. Currently, I'm working as a software architect at Newtons International Private Limited. So let me switch off the video. I think in order to reduce the size of the file, so my voice will be continued. Okay. So in this lecture, we will mainly discuss about detail about the module. So of course, you know that it is very important to discuss about method of assessment. So how the student can gain the marks from the course module. Outline of the course module, what are the topics we are going to mainly cover within this course module. Then what is enterprise architecture, basics about enterprise architecture. Then we will discuss in detail architecture management and planning. So what are the different stages and what are the things we need to consider when we are planning enterprise architecture in a software organization. Then we will discuss about typical software solution approach which is running on a software organization. So finally, we'll discuss about learning outcomes which students should get from the course module. So this is enterprise architecture, 3 credit worth course module. So I am planning to conduct 13 lectures and 2 practicals, right? So then of course we will have a mid examination which is 2-hour MCQ paper. We will have 4 assignments, the group assignments. Let's decide the group size later, right? So it might be probably 4 to 5 students in a group. You can contact me through my email address, adilrook@newtons.lk, which is my office email address. Also, you can view my professional profile through my LinkedIn URL provided. Method of assessment. So in this course module, 60% of the total marks is allocated for the final examination, which is 3 hours closed book paper. So I'm planning to provide 6 questions. So students need to answer only 5 questions out of that 6 questions. So then remaining 40% student has to get from the continuous assessments. The continuous assessments is divided to 2 main parts. The first is the mid examination, so which is 50% from the continuous assessment marks is allocated for the mid examination. That is MCQ 2-hour paper. So remaining 50% will be given to group assignments. So I'm planning to provide 4 group assignments which are equally marked. So this is the module outline actually. First, we will discuss about the introduction, so which today I am doing now. So the next lecture will be trade-off of software architecture quality attributes. So with that lecture, we will mainly discuss about different software quality attributes, right? So you know that when we are designing a software application or a software system, so of course we need to consider different architectural attributes or quality attributes. For an example, performance of that system, security of that system, scalability of that system, availability of that system, the maintainability, usability, testability. So those quality attributes we need to consider about. So in the second lecture, we will discuss all those main quality attributes and how we need to consider those things and what are the trade-offs, especially because you know that when we are trying to achieve some of the quality attributes, so definitely some other quality attributes might be getting impacted. The good example is that performance, right? So performance and security. So when we trying to achieve security, for an example, let's say encoding a message or encrypting a message, uh, transferring through a network. So definitely performance latency will be added. So just because of the encryption and decryption times. So how we can balance the quality attributes in a good level for a software system is so much important nowadays. So we will detail discuss about those things in the lecture number 2, trade-offs of software architecture quality attributes. So third lecture will be analysis of different application domains. So actually within that lecture, so we'll discuss about different domains of software applications. For an example, enterprise resource planning application, ERP application, which can be running on different you know that businesses, different organization, in order to manage the resources, their inventories, their sales, their distributions, their profits and all. So most of the organizations nowadays using a ERP application. So we'll discuss about ERP application, what are the modules, what are the functions, the which kind of reports are there in the ERP application, right? So in order to have a good understanding about the ERP system. So not only that, we'll discuss about some banking applications, the brokerage applications, stock brokerage applications. So what are the main things? What are the main functionalities within those domains, right? So not only that, hospital management system and insurance management system and learning management systems and different other applications like the communication application like chat applications, the email applications, and those things also will be discussed in briefly in that lecture. So that is lecture number 3rd, right? So which I am planning to do. The lecture number 4 will be the one of the main lecture I'm going to handle in this course module, which is enterprise architecture analysis framework. That is so much important. Actually, there are different enterprise architecture frameworks, which we can discuss about within that lecture. So simply Sacman framework, RMODP, FPA, TOGAF and DODAP like frameworks will be discussed in detail and will identify the that different viewpoints of enterprise architecture and the stakeholders, how different stakeholders are connected to each stage of a enterprise architecture. Using these frameworks, we can easily analyze those things. So that is one of the main lecture I'm going to handle in the lecture number 4. So in the lecture number 5, evaluation of enterprise architectures, right? So that is also important. So how we can evaluate enterprise architectures, what are the methods we can evaluate enterprise architectures, especially uh, architecture trade-off analysis method, ATAM, and cost benefit analysis will be discussed about within that lecture. So of course, you know that in that lecture we can discuss about ROI, the return of investment, the payback analysis. You know that those things might be analyzed according to different projects. Sometimes we are targeting ROI, while sometimes we analyze the project using payback. Uh, we will discuss detail about those things and how to calculate the payback and the ROI for a given software project, right? So in the lecture number 6, data representation and analysis. So that is so much important because every software application has data, right? So how we are going to represent data, the information, right? So for different stakeholders of that application, sometimes management might need you know that data in their fingertips, right? So especially with the aggregated data, right? So using the graph charts and those things, detailed reports for that analyzers in the system, right? So likewise, that according to different stakeholders, different users in the system, the data representation techniques might be different, right? So we will mainly discuss about different data representation techniques and analysis within that lecture, lecture number 6. The lecture number 7 is mainly focused on the service-oriented architecture. So everybody might heard about uh, service-oriented architecture, SOA, right? So nowadays in the software industry, this is so much, that important. The rather monolithic software architecture nowadays, everybody is targeting service-oriented architecture, which is that so much loosely coupled architecture of a software application in order to reduce the maintainability and all. So we will discuss about service-oriented architecture and especially ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, in the lecture number 7. Then the lecture number 8, which is cloud computing, right? So we will detail discuss about cloud computing in the lecture number 8. So you know that nowadays the most of the that the companies is targeting to host their application sometimes in the cloud, rather everybody is going to get that the private infrastructure within their organization itself. The nowadays the peoples are move towards to the cloud computing as well. So there are pros and cons, of course, whether we are going to use the cloud computing or that their own uh, infrastructure. So we will discuss those things, the comparisons, how we are choosing between cloud computing and in-house computing, right? So of course, with that lecture, I will discuss about green computing as well. So you know that the green computing is the nowadays the people are much talking about because due to environmental impact with the computing, right? So you know that if everybody is running their machines and their infrastructures within their organization, so then definitely there might be that the environmental heating. So in order to cool in the systems, there might be a lot of uh, electrical energy is required, right? So in order to reduce those things, how we can focus on the green computing concepts. So different green computing concepts we will discuss about the within the lecture number 8. So then lecture number 9, so we will mainly discuss about techniques for assessing and managing risk. How we are managing risk in a software system, right? So you know that in a software application, from requirement gathering to deliver, and after that we have to maintain the application. There are a lot of phases during the requirement gathering to delivering and maintenance. So in all of these stages, so we need to properly calculate the risk happening within this project, right? So there are several stages of risk management, and there are qualitative and quantitative mechanisms which we can calculate the risk. So all those things we will detail discuss within this lecture, lecture number 9. So in the lecture number 10, we will discuss about system integration techniques. So nowadays, you know that there are almost many systems are integrated with different other systems. For an example, if we get an example online ordering system or online ordering portal, so definitely it is integrated with the payment gateway, right? So and sometimes with SMS gateways, email gateways, likewise the different other softwares or software components or software systems, it is integrated, right? So especially in order to that give better user experience, so we might needed to integrated our system with different other software systems, right? So what are the techniques? So what are the technologies, the mechanisms, the architectures we are following software system integrations will be detailed discussed in the lecture number 10. The lecture number 11 is mainly focused about compliance in enterprise architecture. All right. So you know that audit and the compliance is so much important to have in a large scale software system. Audit is always required to provide digital forensics in the system. The compliance has to be implemented within that software system in order to approved by the legal entities, right? So especially let's get an example like let's say stock brokerage solutions. So there are a lot of compliance rules we need to follow, and we need to implement it within that software application. Otherwise, most of the clients will not be accepted that software as the compliance software, right? It might be getting rejected. So all those things we will discuss in the lecture number 11. The lecture number 12, we will mainly focus about system migration techniques and challenges. So you know that whatever a system we newly developed, right, for a client or for an organization, so if they are already running a system, software system, when we are going to put the new system, so definitely there might be a migration process because they already have their own data, right? So within the old system, right, old system databases. So how we migrate all those data to the new system, right? So not only that, sometimes they already have the payment gateways, they already have the email gateways, and they might have different other, that integrations, right? So all those things we need to migrate it to the new system uh, when it is going live with the new system, right? So we need to shut off the old system, and we need to going live with the new system. So there might be different techniques, technologies in the data migration and the system migration, and there are a lot of challenges as well, because how we are choosing a proper cutoff time. So if it is a 24 by 7 system, that do we have a cutoff time, right? So can we put the new system without any interruption to the current business? So there are a lot of things we need to consider in the system migration. So we will detail discuss system migration techniques and challenges in the lecture number 12. The lecture number 13, we will mainly discuss about system administration and maintenance, right? So that even after we put the system in the live, so there might be administrations, there might be maintenance in the system, right? So in the production servers, so sometimes we might need to monitor the servers. We might need to monitor the audits, right? We might need to measure in the health of the application servers. So there are a lot of activities and the things we might need to consider even after the going live. How we are maintaining the databases, the database, that when the database are growing up, how we maintain the database, these database indexes, right? So whether it is the system is going slower, so what are the solutions for that, right? So any network issue monitoring, right? So not only that, sometimes there can be attacks, right? Security attack or outside attack from different, that attackers. So how we identify those attacks, right? So any digital forensics kind of things. So whether we can find out any unauthorized persons has look into our information and data, right? So all those things has to be considered in system administration and maintenance. We will discuss detail those things in the lecture number 13. So those are the lectures I am planning to uh, that handle within this course module. Okay, so what is enterprise architecture? So okay, can you think about what is enterprise architecture? Okay, pause this video and you just try to find out what is enterprise architecture. Okay, fine. So actually enterprise architecture is not only for a software organization, right? But also it can be applied for any business organization, right? But within this course module, we are mainly focused a software organization, right? So enterprise architecture on a software organization. So if we mainly think about the enterprise architecture, it is a process for documenting an element of an enterprise for business models and strategies, organizational structure, policies and technologies, as well as infrastructure, services and operations. Not only that, there might be some others. So simply, enterprise architecture is a process, strategies, documenting the methodologies to have a comprehensive idea about overall business uh, workflow, right? For an example, let's get an software organization, right? So if we get kind of that medium to large software organization, So there are a lot of that business unit itself, right? So there can be development team unit, there can be human resource team, right? So there can be that shared services team, the managers, right? The directors. So likewise, that there is organizational structure. So in that organization structure, right? So there are a lot of policies are defined, right? So if we get a very simple example, right? So who will approve leaves of you, right? So if you are working as the developer or a BA or a QA, let's say, so who will having the authority to authorize your leaves? That's also defined in the enterprise architecture, right? So what are the tools, technologies we are using to handle those things, right? So this is, I'm talking about just that human resource management part, but there are lots of other things when we are targeting a software organization. uh, when we are that dealing with the software project or a software system, right? Who are the stakeholders participating for that software project, right? Developers, the architects, team leads, the managers, right? The clients, right? What is the methodology we are using in that software project, right? So whether we are using a Scrum, Agile Scrum, whether we are using waterfall uh, software methodologies, right? So what are the development techniques, the development technologies, right? The compliance, right? So there are a lot of things, the lot of tools, technologies, not only that, policies, right? So uh, we are applying in the software project. So all those things together, we call it as enterprise architecture, right? So it is all about the everything in the software organization, how we define the strategies, policies, technologies, the documentation mechanisms. We call it as a enterprise architecture. So I hope you get a idea about what is enterprise architecture, right? So in different organization, even in software organization, if the services are different, the providing services are different, and the size of the organization is different, the strategies, documenting mechanisms, the organization is structured, the policies, the technologies they are using might be getting different, right? So but they should have a well-defined structure, right? Well-defined structure in order to properly maintain the things, right? So that is, we call it as a enterprise architecture. But that sometimes in a very small organization, they do not define those kind of specific policies, strategies, and that operations. They are not following enterprise architecture kind of a things, right? Because when the organization is much smaller, right? So they manage those things in a very ad hoc manner. But why we need an enterprise architecture? Why we need an enterprise architecture for an organization, right? So especially to have an enterprise architecture is a good strategy to handle a task of high complexity and the high rate of change, right? So if the organization is complex, if the projects we are going to handle is complex, right? So if it is rapidly changing, right, the change requests are coming very rapidly, so it is that essential to use the enterprise architectural mechanism, right? So otherwise it is a very that it might be a that very yeah, it is a very bad impacted will be coming to the organization. So just because of that, so when the company is large and the project is large and that complex, and the requirement is the high rate of change, it is better to use the enterprise architecture. So I hope it is clear to you, right? So if you have any questions, we'll be discuss further later, right? So you can have those questions when I meet you on next day, right? Okay, good. So next we will discuss about architecture management and planning, right? So simply in this slide, so I can explain about that uh, different stages of a software project and software organization, right? So what are the main things we can think about in the enterprise architecture, right? So if we think about this part, right? The business unit and departmental uh, interviews, right? So of course, so in this we might need to that consider about different the business unit within that organization, right? The HR unit, the development unit, right? The management unit, the shared unit. So likewise, there might be different. So in different organization, this unit might be the different, right? So what are the the roles and responsibilities for each unit? So even for different roles, what are the roles defining in different units, right? So all those things has to be well defined in the organization, right? So next thing is the organizational charts, right? So what are the charts? What are the things allocated for different business units, business users, right? That is also so much important. The project inventories, so that is so much important. So what are the current projects and what are the closed projects or projects which we have completed? So what are the projects it might be coming in future, right? So all those projects portfolios has to be well maintained in the organization, right? So sometimes even the project is completed, there might be that the maintenance phases, right? The maintenance agreements, right? uh, just due to that, all the projects we have completed, all the project or ongoing projects, all the future projects inventories has to be well managed in the organization. So next thing is the configuration management, right? The configuration management is so much important for an organization, right? So what are the different configurations, the different the hardware configuration and the network configurations, and those things has to be the well documented and well defined, right? So then of course the standards, right? So which kind of standards we are following, right? So what are the different it might be that development standards, it might be that architectural standards, right? So it might be a HR standard, right? So there can be a lot of standards uh, can be applied for organization. So each organization, so we have to define, okay, what are the standards we are following within that organization. That is also so much important. So next thing is the budgets. So budget is again important. You know that how we are allocating the expenses for each unit, sometimes each project. right? So each year, right? So what are the that incomes we are going to get and how it is balancing, all those things has to be managed under budgets, right? Without budgets, so everything else will not be work properly. So then the life cycle management, right? So if we talk about software project, you know that there are different life cycle, right? So in that software project, so maintaining those things might be very important in the uh, software system. That is also contributing in architecture, management, and planning. Version controlling. So that is, for an example, let's say if we are doing a software project, so there might be different versions for different components, different software components. So we have to well maintain all these versioning management things. So then, of course, frameworks and reference models, right? So what are the frameworks we are using in this organization in order to handle different projects, right? Sometimes what are the architectural frameworks? So what are the the technology frameworks we are using, right? So all those things, so we have to well define. So next thing is the vendor and the new technology, right? So who are the vendors for this organization, and what are the new technologies, right? So there should be a research kind of a team or a unit to find out the new things, new technologies, right? The new inventions in the relevant domain to apply for the organization, right? That is also so much important. Skills inventory, right? So which is so much important actually, because you know that sometimes the different kind of projects can be coming to the organization, right? Different business deals. So we have to well maintain skill inventory within that organization. Who are the that Oracle skills developers, right? Oracle administration uh, people, right? So do we have any Microsoft technology experts? Do we have any Java technology experts, right? So what is the expertise level of these people? So likewise, so we have to properly maintain skill inventory, right? So using that, we can that accept or reject some projects due to our skill inventories at that time. So then corporate and the fixed assets inventory, right? So of course, that we have different fixed assets. So like the buildings, right? The different branches and those things. So we have to properly maintain those inventories as well, right? This is under financial. So departmental fixed assets and inventory, right? So that is also under the financial, but it is important to manage. So then of course the IT hardware inventory. So that is so much important, right? So what are the hardware inventories? The laptops, the computer machines, server machines, right? So any the mobile devices, what are the inventories? So at the moment, the which that product is allocated for which person, right? So likewise, the IT hardware inventory also so much important for an organization. IT software application inventory. So what are the softwares we have? What are the applications we have developed, right? So this kind of inventory also so much important, because some applications we have developed can be reused in different other clients, right? So if client come with a requirement or a system, we can refer this software or application inventory, so whether we can fulfill their requirement using the existing application inventory, right? So that is also so much important to have. So of course the connectivity diagrams, topology maps, right? So okay, what are the network diagrams? What are the other that clients, their branches, our within this organization, what are the branches? So all those things also so much important when we talk about architecture management, right? So now you can understand the enterprise architecture is not only that development, is not only that requirement gathering, is not only that delivering a system, but it is all about simply the how the organization is managed, right? So everything is together is considered in the enterprise architecture. But that in different units at different stages, the different ones might be used different standards, technologies, and techniques, right? The different frameworks, different applications, but so everything together we considered it as a enterprise architecture. I hope it is clear to you, right? This part. So let me move to the next slide, right? Okay, good. So in here we will mainly discuss about a typical software solution approach, right? So actually here is just considering a few parts of a software solution, not all the parts, right? So and identified, okay, what are the technologies, techniques, and methodologies which can used in those areas, right? First, development methodology, right? So if we discuss about a software organization or a software company, right? So there are a lot of development methodologies, right? So sometimes we can use the agile scrum development methodology, right? Sometimes we can use test driven development methodology. So sometimes it can be the waterfall development methodology, right? So likewise, there can be different development methodologies, the following uh, in that organization. Sometimes the multiple of them can be followed in different, that software projects as well, right? So that is also important. It is not always that needed to follow a single development methodology, can follow multiple development methodologies in different software projects. So then of course the development practices, right? So this is mainly important for the software developers, right? So what are the architecture and design reviews, right? So when the software is designing, right? When the software is developing, so what are the review mechanisms? Whether it is peer-to-peer review, whether it is that the lead is reviewing, that the members' codes. So likewise, who will review the architectural design, right? Who will do the architectural design, right? So whether they have architectural design review board, right? So all those things is considered under development practices, right? Code review and standards. This is also so much important. We need to consider in the development practices. So next, if we think about the delivery side or delivery angle, right? So after we develop the software product, so how we can deliver it to the different uh, stages, right? So actually delivering also focus on different environments. For an example, sometimes it has to be delivered to the QA environment, quality assurance environment, right? So sometimes we need to deliver it to the users acceptance environment, right? User acceptance testing environment, UAT environment, right? Because the client, the production environment is different than the UAT environment, right? So let me briefly that detail about those things. So in a typical software solution, right? So we have development environment first. So within that environment, developers is developing the things. The database can be exist, right? So when the developers are developed the software, so they move into the QA environment. The QAs mainly, that reside in the development organization itself, right? But it is, of course, a separate environment. There is no interference by the developers to the QA environment. Also, the QAs to the development environment, because the QA testing and test scenarios, test cases is running on properly on the QA environment, right? So that is the QA environment. Then, of course, we have the UAT environment after that, right? So after the QA is passed, we did not put that to the production directly, right? So it will go through the UAT environment, user acceptance testing. So that is mainly reside in the client side, right? So client users has to be, that accept the changes and the modifications has been done to the software system or a software product the before it moves to the production, because sometimes we do not know whether the requirement is properly gathered, right? Because the QA is testing according to the requirement document, right? So they write the test cases and test scenarios according to the requirement document, but we do not know exactly it is valid in the it is valid for the client user. When the client user is testing the product, sometimes they might identify, okay, it is not the requirement they what they need, right? So they has to accept so whatever the changes has been done in the system in order to go for the next level. Okay, the next is the production, right? So which is the live environment with users are using the system in live, right? So simply what I want to highlight it here is that, so after the development is done, so after the developers are packaged the software system, right? So there are several other environments which delivery or a deployment is required, right? So which is a very important and very the large process as well. So nowadays, that the peoples are practicing DevOps and continuous integration kind of things, right? So most of the things are so much that automated in the different environments. In the continuous integration, sometimes when the developers are that check in or commit their changes to the source controls, right? Code might be automatically compiled, automatically packaged, and if there is any scheduled, right? So sometimes there might be that automate test automations, right? So sometimes these test automation might be getting fired, right? So if the test automation also success, right? So it might be moved to the others environment, that is automatically we can configure in the continuous integration tools, right? There are a lot of tools nowadays people is using in the DevOps, right? So next thing is the documentation practices, right? That is also so much important in software organization. The requirement documentation, how we are managing the requirement documentation. Not only that, right? But also architecture design and these documentations, right? Sometimes the business documentations also required, right? So what are the agreement documentations, right? So all those things might be considered in the documentation practices, right? So actually, so in requirement documentation, right? So what is the practices, right? Whether after the requirement document is written, It has to be, approved by both client and the software vendors, right? So those things are the practices, right? So if there is any changes happen, whether we are doing it in the same BRD document or we are writing a new BRD document, right? So those are the policies and practices we are using in the documentation. In the architectural document also same, right? So if we think about the tools and technologies, right? So we can think about different tools and technologies in the development. We can use the Agile Scrum, using Jira, Basecamp kind of tools. You know that Jira is very much famous uh, application or a comprehensive application which is provided fully agile scrum practices, development methodologies, right? uh, in development practices, so enterprise architecture, visual paradigm we can use, right? So in order to design some architectural design, the code repositories of course we are using, right? The source controls, the GitHub Bitbucket like tools, right? The code quality, in order to maintain the measure the code quality, we can use the Sona, right? So likewise, so there are a lot of technologies and techniques we are using in the development practices as well. I am just that scanning those things here, but later in other lectures we will deeply discuss some of these techniques, tools and things. So if we go to the delivery or deployment, right? So we can use the Jenkins, the GitLab, Docker, Chef, Monit, New Relief, Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes is very much famous nowadays for the continuous integration as a continuous integration technology, right? So those things, those technologies is in the delivery side. So if we focus on the documentation, technologies and tools, so we can think about the DMS, right? The document for Jira, document management system, BMP, business process management, right? So Visagi modeler we can use. So you know that for most of the software projects, there is a big business process management, right? So there is a big process, big workflows, right? So we can manage those things using the Visagi modeler. So I hope you get some idea about typical software solution approach, right? Uh, List down your question if you have, right? We'll discuss those things on Saturday, right? Good. So this is the last part of the this lecture, the introduction lecture, right? So what are the learning outcomes you will gain after completing this course module, right? So especially you should understand variety of frameworks for enterprise architecture analysis and decision making, right? So simply the Sackman framework, RMODP, FPA, TOGAP, and DODAP frameworks we are trying to that cover in this course module. You should have proper understanding about those architectural analysis and decision making frameworks. The next outcome is able to evaluate total cost of ownership and return on investment for architecture alternatives. That is also so much important. After completing this course module, you should be able to evaluate total cost of ownership and the return on investment, ROI, values of a software project, right? Next one is utilize techniques for assessing and managing risk across the portfolio of the enterprise, right? That is also so much important because any software project might having risk, right? You should be able to assessing and managing risk across the portfolio of the enterprise has to be get. The next thing is able to evaluate and plan for the integration of imaging technologies, right? So you should be able to have a proper understanding about what are the different integration architectures, integration mechanism, integration technologies. So which kind of integrations has to be used for the given scenarios, right? Given projects. That has to be uh, understand and uh, evaluate in the software project. That is also one of the main learning outcome. The next one is understand the system administration issues, including the use of virtualization and monitoring power and cooling issues. Yes. So of course, uh, even after we deliver the software system, right? What are the administration issues? The what are the virtualization concepts, the monitoring concepts, the power providing and cooling issues, right? The green computing concepts, those things you should have a proper understanding. You have to have a proper understanding, and you should be able to, that choose among different techniques and technologies. The next one is understand the core concepts of data information architecture and evaluate existing data information architecture design, right? So for different projects, so which data concept, which data and information representation techniques which we can use, right? So that is also so much important. The next learning outcome is able to plan for business continuity, right? So it is not only about development, right? Uh, Requirement gathering and delivery, but how we continue the business properly. So that learning out, that also so much important. You should be able to have a proper understanding about the maintenance phase, right? So how the client can give the uh, change request, right? So how the business is continued with the client properly. So next learning outcome is understand the benefits of and risk of service-oriented architecture, right? So of course, service-oriented architecture is not, that perfect thing, right? So service-oriented architecture is nowadays people are mostly used, but there can be, that risk of using the service-oriented architecture as well, right? So you should be able to properly choose among the other architectures we are using in the software industry. So that is why we need to have benefits and the risk of service-oriented architecture properly understand. The next learning outcome, understand the role of audit and compliance in the enterprise architecture. This is also so much important. You should be able to understand what is the importance having audit and compliance in enterprise architecture, and different applications and different domains, what are the audits and compliance is required. The next one is understand the integration of enterprise system with interorganizational partners such as suppliers, government, and etc. Because the software systems can be integrated with multiple other organization and partners, as well as sometimes government organization, right? So what are the mechanisms, what are the ways, what are the existing methodologies, the mechanisms we have to integrate with those parties has to have a understanding. So I hope it is clear. These are the main learning outcomes, right? So after completing this course module, which you will be getting, right? Yes, that's the end of this lecture, right? Lecture number 1, which is introduction in the enterprise architecture course module. I hope you get a proper idea about especially what we are going to cover within this course module, right? So method of assessment, right? So how you get the marks in this course module. So what is enterprise architecture, right? Simply what is enterprise architecture and what are the phases when we need to consider a enterprise architecture. So that is end of this lecture, and I will stop here. Good day for all of you. Thank you very much.